Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited about this webinar. This is I don't even know how many we've done now. How long have we been here? Who knows? But this is really exciting because I'm joined by two of my favorite women to talk about something that I think is incredibly topical and really present on people's minds, which is how can we go back to a situation where there's remote school and work, and how the ever-present stress and the palpable anxiety that I hear from my friends and colleagues and from the second shift community when I'm having conversations with people about, and personally myself, about my own stress around what's going to happen with school, people who are going on parental leave, people who need to take family leave, people who don't actually know what their kids' school is going to look like in the fall, or are trying to get a new job and don't know what their schedule looks like, or if they should even take this new job because they're in this really untenable and unpredictable place. So today we're going to talk to Karen Finckenor, who is a second shift member, as well as a leader in people development, HR, and learning and development with 20 years of experience, having worked for creative organizations like Google and Publicis and Dentsu. And she brings a really awesome perspective regarding the talent perspective from the company and how to navigate both sides of that. So how to speak up to your manager and say what you need. And if you're a manager, how to organize your team so that way you give them the flexibility they need and allow them to take it. And then Lauren Smith Brody, who is a friend, and I'm a big fan of her work. She is the founder and author of the Fifth Trimester. She was an executive editor at Glamour who saw firsthand how difficult it is to balance a high-profile career while having two kids, and created a book about that period of time after you have the baby, when you are resettling into your life and figuring out how you are going to go back to the person you were when you're actually a new person. And also she works a lot with companies and new parents as they, again, embrace this new identity and figure out how to balance the demands of business and workplace. And she's a real advocate for working parents. So welcome, ladies. And thank you to everybody who's here participating, all of our members and people who've joined from outside as well. Please, let's dive in. I think we should just start off with, this has been really hard for working parents and particularly working moms. There was a study that showed that 14% of working moms were thinking about leaving the workforce because they felt so overwhelmed. And as we're leading into the place where some schools are actually starting soon, how can we mitigate this stress? How can we advocate for ourselves on both sides, from the business side and from the working parent side? Karen, how do you think about that, and how do you work through that uncertainty?
Yeah, it's the $64,000 question today. Everybody is thinking about how to ask for they need in the absence of information, not knowing what schools will look like, not knowing what new policies will be rolled out. So it's a difficult one, not only for parents, but for organizations as well. Nobody knows there's no playbook for this. So nobody really knows how to do this properly. Or how to do this correctly that's going to offer people what they need, which actually creates an advantage for you if you're an employee, because with no policy, with no sense of how do we do this properly, it does open up opportunity to step up and advocate for your needs and ask for what you're going to need going forward. So your career works and your home works, and it all is going to work for you. And I can get into some details, both the art and the science of how to do that, some real actionable steps, and also how to face the fear. For a lot of people, it is really scary to ask for what they need.
Yeah, how do you face that fear? And I
Well,
want also, Lauren, you're from the perspective being your own boss too. Lauren, you're your own boss, and you have clients, but you also have to keep yourself on a specific schedule. How do you talk to management?
How do I talk to myself? I love that. I try to understand that, this term that we've been using, that you particular, Jenny, have been using for years now about work-life integration as
Yeah.
opposed to work-life balance is just, more real than ever. It is something that, I have really until March primarily worked with new moms returning to work. And now all of a sudden, everyone who's not an essential worker, everyone who is able to work from home is facing a lot of the same challenges that moms in what I call the fifth trimester, the return to work after baby, have faced for years and have been in a position to have to really negotiate for flexibility and things that support their personal lives in ways that can feel really uncomfortable if you've never done it before. And yet, what's so interesting right now is that it's actually almost a little more egalitarian. Like we're a lot of us are feeling this, even those of us
Yeah.
with kids who are older. My kids are, oh, by the way, I always like to start these things by saying my kids are 9 and 12. I have a rescue puppy who barks. Like that will happen at some point in this 45 minutes, probably. And because I've said it, maybe it won't, but I want everybody to feel like if, like you unmute accidentally and your dog barks, like it's okay. So I think it's really important, in any negotiation, and I'm dying to hear Karen's sort of step by step because I have mine. I bet they're similar, but I'm going to learn from you. It's important as a very first step to internalize some of the positive attributes of the things that you're asking for. So, flexibility does make us more loyal, does make us more productive. And while, March and April and even May have felt like emergency mode, it's pretty clear, particularly to parents right now, that as we look towards September, and I'm actually originally from Atlanta where school started like this week, this is a new fluid adaptable normal. This isn't just emergency mode anymore. And so everyone's going to have to give from both sides to make it sustainable, particularly if we want to keep women in the workforce. So internalize all the things that are actually positive about flexibility, internalize things that are really important culturally about keeping women in the workforce. Know that if you can speak up and ask for something that feels like a special ask for my own special personal need, there are probably 10 other people around you who don't feel like they have the privilege or executive sort of role to be able to ask for those things and speak up, because you're going to be helping your greater culture at your company, perhaps your whole industry, and our wider culture, nationally as well.
Yeah, I agree. I
no
think
pressure.
the importance of understanding how to speak up to advocate for your career is a human skill. That's not even just a professional skill. It's really understanding how to advocate and empower yourself to create a life that works for you. So that is something that I encourage everyone. If it's something that you're not practiced in or you are practiced in, this is an opportunity to up your game in that. And that will help you. The hidden curriculum for me is always like, how are we going to use this in the future? So as you're negotiating your next role, as you're negotiating a salary, talking about a promotion, speaking up for what you need is probably the most important takeaway I find from this today, particularly in the work environment, which can be scary. It can be, Lauren, to your point, not everyone feels that they can speak up in the work environment. And as an HR professional who's been on the other side of the desk for 20 years, you can and you should speak up for what you need in the work environment. Organizations and managers by design, their role is intended to help you be successful and help you be at your best and do your best work. And the only way they can help you do that is by really understanding what you need as an employee. Everyone's different. We're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. So you have to really articulate and understand, what do you need specifically to make your life work better and make your career work better?
There's a lot of talk right now about being vulnerable and showing up, with your whole self in the workplace. And I think in some ways we've all been doing that because we have dogs and kids and we're seeing people's homes. And so that piece of it where you're exposed, but then there's the piece of it that is your fear, because you said, how do you show up and say, okay, your office is now open and people are expected to be in 3 days a week, but you actually can't do that. Or you don't know if you should take a new job because you don't want to tell this new employer, hey, I can't do this. Here's your expectation, but this is what it's going to have to look like for me. Mm-hmm. What are some of the actual steps that somebody could do to make the case for what they need?
Yeah, I think to your point, exactly that. Like really start with educating yourself to what's available to you. Employers were caught off guard also, March, April, May, and June. Didn't know what to expect, didn't really know how to facilitate flexibility or give people what they needed. So chances are they've also been planning over the summer to look at how many parents they have in their organization, which is probably, half, if not more, and to look at how to create a system that's both going to work for the business and work for employees. So there may be new resources, policies, benefits in place. Check in with your manager and or your HR person, because your manager may not know about them. They're going to be things that are coming off the press, now as we're speaking. So definitely check in with your organization to see what's available to you, things that you may or may not have known about. I would suggest to start there.
Can I also just chime in that, what I'm seeing among my clients is there's a real fear of being discriminatory without meaning to, too. So, you may feel like I'm speaking up as a mom in this job, or I'm speaking up as a parent. The truth is, a lot of people you work with are caregivers in one way or another, whether that is for a spouse, an older child with, a learning challenge, elder care for an older parent, or even to protect your own mental health, like self-care counts too. So it's important to think that, you're not just exposing yourself to this stigma of being a parent, but actually probably everybody else needs some accommodating as well.
Yes. It is a leveler in that for sure, because everyone has their own needs. Have you, Lauren, had any experience where people were going on parental leave in this situation and there was a real blurry line and they had to step back because the problem with flexible work, as we found out, is it works really well when your kids are at school. And it doesn't work really well when you have a newborn or you're trying to teach second grade. So how do you figure out when those lines are blurry, how to create boundaries for people or to set themselves up productively going into the fall?
So, there are so few boundaries now, and I think it's okay. And I think that what's important is to talk about the fact that there aren't many. It's why I said that my dog may bark, my kids may bust in here. I could tell you what they're doing right now. Both of them are on screens, and I'm willing to share that. And I think it's inviting people, who you're with to be that open. I mean, we are seeing each other's personal lives in a way that we never have before, and in a way that, acknowledges that life is really, really precious. That said, I think it's an important acknowledgement that although we have measured our success, for forever, in the United States in terms of like the exact hours we work and the dollar amount that those hours bring in, we might need to have some new measures for success. And so some of that you can convince yourself, you may not be working I live in New York City, like a normal work day here for a lot of people is 10 hours and then logging back in. You may not have 10 full productive hours, but you may be able to carve out 2 productive bursts of work and then the rest of the time be like taking information in on Slack or on email. And so the important thing to do in that situation is to be really predictable and really dependable to the people around you so that, don't try to hide the fact that this is hard. It's okay if it looks hard. That actually makes you somewhat heroic if it's hard and you still do it, right? And it lets other people who may not feel as emboldened to sort of share what's challenging that you might be able to help problem solve for them, share it. So be predictable in what this is an ideal situation, varies obviously industry by industry, what those 2 flow chunks are going to be. That sounds gross, flow chunks, but like 2 productive bursts of time. For me, it's typically like 10:30 to 1, and then it's usually again from like 3 to 5, and then I may log on, after my kids are in bed, but they're older, so they go to bed really late these days. And so it's communicating that. It's saying so that you don't walk around with the weight of like, I haven't responded to this thing. I haven't produced that document. I haven't done this thing that's on my list. Tell them when they can expect it. Pad yourself a little time in there just in case, because things are going to come up, and then you can deliver and you're not letting anybody down. But, have whatever you can do to wall off, those couple of chunks of time. With babies, it's usually nap time, which is not always predictable, but, can start to consolidate around like the 4-month mark. With older kids, I think there's all these wonderful news stories in the New York Times about how screen time is not deadly. And actually, we used to count it in terms of hours, like how many you get. It's not like that anymore. It's really kind of quality and content and, what ability it allows parents to maintain their sanity. So start thinking of your time in those ways. And obviously, every resource you have available to you of money, of partner, of seniority, use those resources. Do not deny yourself that support.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are we worried? We participated in a story the other day. This is a little off topic, but participated in a story regarding something they're calling the female recession, and that women are going to leave their jobs because they're feeling so overwhelmed. And this is a thing that I feel really concerned about, because we've had 400 times the signups. And I think a lot of it is women were emboldened in the past few years to set off on their own, starting up their own consulting businesses, starting up their startups, and then taking work on the side. And that was a really great opportunity. And now that is such a rocky position, because you don't know where your next job is going to come from, and you're a consultant, and you're kind of always in that precarious situation. But then also, like, full-time work is also that reliable either right now. So there's so much stress on top of the stress that a lot of working parents already feel, single parents feel, parents who are taking, workers who are taking care of older family members. And I just wonder what advice you can give from your own experiences, or what you see in terms of the way that corporate clients are willing to adapt, or are there for clients, or what kind of ways people are navigating that. What are the 3 best tips that you can give?
There are so many.
I just want women. I feel I personally feel stressed out, because I feel like I get a lot of input from people, and I hear a lot of the stress, right? So I hear about the tenuous work, or the partner who was laid off, or the the child who's home who has special needs, and how hard that is. And some people work for great companies that offer family leave, and so you can take that, and that's amazing. But lots of people have set off on their own, or have businesses that they have to keep going, otherwise they'll shut, or are shuttering.
I can be kind of vulnerable here and just share that. And I think I kind of forgot to answer this earlier when you asked it, Jenny, but I obviously run my own business. And when I started doing this work, most of my income, I do some consulting, I do some speaking, I do some management training. I'm still a journalist. I write for places like the New York Times, and have maintained sort of that piece of my work, because it just gives me such good research access and credibility, which I'm grateful to have. But when I started doing this work, I would pitch HR, and I would pitch talent, and I would pitch D&I, and I would say, this is the right thing to do for these parents. You must support them in this gap between, so the 5th trimester is like when you come back to work, spanning to when all of the research shows us is actually healthy and productive and good for our economy for new parents to come back to work, which is really like you really need 6 paid months of leave to protect mental health, physical health, partner's health, your investment career, et cetera, et cetera. So it's bridging that gap. And I used to just like smile and say, this is the right thing to do. You should hire me. And they'd say, okay, well, what do you cost? And then I would tell them what it cost to hire me. And they'd go, I got to talk to like a lot of people to get permission. And I pretty quickly, not quickly enough, but pretty quickly figured out that I had to put a dollar amount on my value. And the way that I could do that was by showing them the cost of attrition, but not just the cost of attrition of employees, specifically the cost of attrition of valuable women who are usually, just sort of biologically in terms of when they're having these babies or adopting these babies, on the cusp of becoming real leaders in their companies. And you can there's all this research out there. You have it, Jenny, you share it all the time. I'm sure you do too, Karen, but that puts a dollar amount on a woman's value. And so right now, for anybody who's negotiating this stuff, I would say your time is actually in some ways more valuable, and your input is more valuable than some of your colleagues. And you have to remember that this is a long game, that they need to make this okay for you now in a way that will ultimately, they're going to serve you now in a way, and you're going to pay them back in spades, for years to come if you stay in, but you have to stay in to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I love what you said about it being a long game, because a woman who is starting a family is at probably, I would guess, at a point in her career where it does become a longer game. The strategy and how you move and navigate between roles is longer and deeper. There's a depth to getting into that level of your career. So absolutely to play it out as a long game, and really look at what am I doing today that's going to benefit me down the road. And also asking the hard questions of yourself. If you're working for an employer who is not valuing your time and is not offering you what you need to make your life work so you can be a better employee, which is the silent part of that sentence that doesn't get said. I want my life to work better so I can work better, so I can produce more, so I can be more productive and be at my best when I'm here. Those are questions, they're difficult questions that need to be asked, because the future of work is not work from home, it'll be work from anywhere. We're already seeing that. People are leaving the cities and they're going to Maine and the middle of Montana and Utah and all over the country, or out of the country, when they can get there. So the future of work, and any employers on the line, you want to start thinking about investing in what is the future of work going to look like, because when this is all said and done, it will not be anything remotely like it is now. And we're solving problems in that it will look the same, but it will look vastly different than it does today. And I do believe that's going to bring more opportunity.
I mean, Gina and I have been banging this, the doors, talking about this for the last years, and talking to clients and employers and saying, this is the future and this is where it's going. And people would recognize that, but not actually think that it seemed like an unsurmountable burden to be able to figure out how to change the structure of work. And then it was like, well, just in one day it happened, all of a sudden it just happened. So when I think about the long game, like you said, I think that it's really positive for working parents and women for sure, in general, and workers. And it will be a seismic change to the workforce, and all in the favor of everything we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
We realized one thing though: kids have to go to school.
Thank you.
Kids have to go to make all of this work. That is the piece that has
go is the operative verb there. Go.
We all realize the work.
Although I have to share, my kids are in going into third grade and going into sixth grade, and so one is in lower school and one is in middle school of the school that they attend, and they've done an amazing job, the school, of supporting these children, and they've been awesome. However, we've just learned in the last 24 hours that one will be, and they're going to go physically, we think, which is great, but one's going to be going they're both going to start around 8-ish o'clock in the morning. Then one needs to get picked up at 12:30 or 1, and then the other one needs to get picked up at 3. I was planning on walking to school, like 2.5 miles, and don't really want to take public transportation. My husband will have our car. Oh, my husband's a doctor. He's an essential worker and is driving up to a hospital in Westchester where his whole department was moved. So I may be spending my days walking this 2.5 miles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. This isn't going to be sustainable. So this is a very privileged version of this problem, because at least my kids get to go and see some other children, but I'm in it. I'm totally in it too. And we're going to have to make it work. I will say, as somebody who works for myself, I have really, really tried to take advantage of the flexibility that I have, not just obviously with my time and location of where I am, but also with what I can charge people, with how much I value working with certain clients. The range of what I have been paid to speak in the last month alone is 10x. It's one number and then it's 10 times that number for a different client. And I have a lot of freedom and flexibility to say yes, I'll do that. No, I can't do that. And here's why. Or I can do it, but for this amount of time. And so if you have any of that flexibility as an independent contractor, for anybody who's on who works for themselves, use it and be a little bit transparent about it, so that they understand if they're getting you for less than you would normally charge, or if they're getting some extra bell and whistle that you can give to them because you're doing this from afar and not having to travel to them to consult or whatever it is that you do. Let them know what they're getting of you and the value in that. And I think that it lets you kind of test and experiment a few different, ways of selling what your product is, or even redefining your product. And there's some benefit and excitement in that. That had nothing to do with schools, but I just want to put out
whatever. Yeah. What we do also now is we should get some Q&A, because we have a lot of people on. I'm so glad that so many people have signed up, and a lot of people have asked a bunch of really interesting questions. So
It went very fast, by the way.
yeah, I mean, we could talk
Very
about
quick half hour.
hours. I
Yeah.
could keep going forever, but we have limited time and I really want to get to the questions. So I want to go to the first question is from Stephanie, who asked, what advice do you have for business owners trying to be a working parent while possibly homeschooling? While my husband's open to helping and taking more time off, it's very hard thinking of how to do both, but I want to keep my business. Do I not look to grow? Do I outsource? It's a lot. Yeah, I get that so much as a business owner. I totally understand that the feeling that it's impossible to take on more.
So I think the implication in that question is that probably it sounds like the partner husband's salary might be greater or more stable, and perhaps he carries the benefits for the family. And I think health benefits have never felt more important. And my advice for this stuff has definitely gotten a little more nuanced. I used to say, like, you need to split things as equally as you possibly can. There's a difference between equal and equitable. And if you, I don't know if anybody here has seen this graphic, so I'll just describe it to you. So it's 3 kids looking over the fence of a baseball game, which now sounds like something that may never happen again. But so in the version that is equality, the kids are different heights and differently abled. One is in a wheelchair. It's a famous illustration. It's very Googleable. And in the one that demonstrates equality, everybody is given the same size soapbox to stand on. And guess what? The tallest person can see over, and the middle person can barely see, and the person who's in the wheelchair can't see at all. In equitable, the version of equitable, everybody is given whatever number of soapboxes they need in order to all see at the same height over the fence. So my advice is to think, and we see this in the research on same-sex couples shows that they split the child care and the home care stuff in their equation of their home much more equitably than heterosexual couples. So think about equitability in terms of what you bring in, what your partner brings in, and how much you're going to contribute in the home, but also then assign a value to that task in the home. Every load of laundry that you do while on a conference call, basically you're getting paid double at that point, or you should be, in terms of what you're bringing into your household. So do not undersell the value of all of these things that our culture has really not valued. Domestic labor and things like teaching are incredibly underpaid, as we know. And this is a moment of real correction for that. And, anything that you see that is, we talk about invisible labor in the home. Well, guess what? It is all now much more visible to both members, earning members of a family, if you're home together, but you have to be visible about it. You have to talk about what you're doing. You can't just let that partner go off and close the door, of the room that they're going to be in all day long on the conference call. If you're on the conference call and folding laundry, you got to assume that your partner can probably do the same thing.
Good answer. Karen, I have one for you, unless you have an answer you want to.
I do. I wanted to add just a tiny bit to that, to go back to what we were saying about this time and being at a certain level in your career and in your life. It becomes a longer game. So looking at your business, I'm not a business owner, so I can't speak from that perspective, but I do coach women who own their own businesses, and also work for organizations. And to look at your career, whether that be as a business owner or as someone who's going to come up through the ranks and work in a professional environment, to look at it through the perspective of where are you right now? Where do you want to be? Really, you've got to live from the future and really look to be where you're going to be 18 months from now, 24 months from now, 36 months from now, and what can you do right now to sustain that vision? Because it will end and it will look different. So even solving problems today, you may not be solving the thing that's going to help you 12 months down the road or 6 months down the road, because things could look completely different. So, so just make a decision, really get clear on what you can do now, what you're learning now, and how that's going to feed into your vision for the future.
All right, I've got one from Christy. What do you do when HR reps aren't helping you? I advocated for myself with 2 promotion gigs, having notified HR that I was pregnant. The HR rep asked my supervisor, without me present or my permission, how my pregnancy was going as well. I'm not sure what to do in this situation, because then I experienced what feels like retaliatory actions. Consulted a lawyer, but it isn't a slam dunk, so it's hard to prove. But I don't know how to stand up for myself in this situation. Any advice is appreciated.
Yes. I'm sorry on behalf of all the HR people on the planet. I have to apologize for that. No one should be asking about your pregnancy to anyone other than you. And it certainly should not be any platform or venue to be skipped over for a promotion or a career advancing conversation at all. This is a hard one, right? So you've got to really rely on what your values are here and really ask yourself, is this the right employer for you? Is this the employer that will retain you over time? If what they're showing you right now, this is going to happen whether you're pregnant or not. And this is part of the ethos of what their culture could be, is to make decisions about employees without consulting them. So it stinks, and moms and working parents really see more of that than anybody else. But always my question is, are you working for an employer? And your employment is a relationship just like any other relationship. And if this happened in a relationship in your life, what would you do? Would you stay with that person? Would you keep that friend? Would you invest in that? And if the answer to that question is no, though it's a really tricky time, it is a good time to start looking at what your next move might be.
I think that there was something I wanted to bring up earlier, just in terms of promotion and performance review. Yeah. Because that's something that people are very nervous about in this moment where
yes.
you're so afraid you're going to get, how are you being judged?
Yeah.
What are performance metrics? How do you, how do you make sure if you're going to ask for a promotion in this time period that you feel confident doing that, especially if you feel like you want to ask for a promotion, but you also need to ask for all of these concessions to be made in your family life.
Yeah.
How do you untangle that?
It's so a couple things. I think most organizations are looking at their performance reviews this year because this year's been a weird year. There's really no, metric of how we calibrate people during a global crisis and when people are most likely not at their best mentally, physically, and from a work perspective. So most companies are looking at how to mitigate and kind of, understand how to close that delta and fix that gap. Or at least address it appropriately. But from the perspective of advocating for your career, I mean, if always make your case, right? So my 3 things, which I didn't finish, were number 1, do the research, know what's available for you. Number 2, get clear on what your ask is. Get really, really clear on what your ask is. Is flexibility going to solve what you need? Or is there something else? And the third thing is be a partner in the solution. Really talk to your employer about, this is what I need and what I see. This is potentially how it could work. Can we discuss, if this is going to be viable for the business? And asking for a promotion will be very similar to the same thing. Like, you come to your manager and to your HR person or whoever is the most appropriate person with your case. Why is it that you should be promoted this year? Talk to me about your perspective on that. What have you done based on what our policies are that have you bumping up to the next level? Many organizations will look at that and say, okay, we need to see that behavior over a sustained period of time. So most companies will say, okay, it's great that you're doing that now, but do it for 6 months and we'll talk in 6 months, or we'll talk in 3 months, because you really want to see that that's behavior and not something that's just starting to happen, and something that can be sustained over time. So make your case. Make your case, regardless. Listen, I worked in advertising and I had a 4-day work week and I got promoted and handled a full-time load. So, you've got to be clear on what your value is and make your case for why you should have that.
I would also keep meticulous records of what you've accomplished, because it's a time when we're feeling less visible. And this is something I hear particularly from new parents as they go back. They've been on maternity leave, they've been on paternity leave. They haven't been part of this dramatic shift, and now they're coming in, midway through.
Yeah.
You want to be as visible as you can. You want to actually, those proverbial water cooler conversations, the people you might have said hello and caught up to, and maybe you caught wind of something that they were going to be working on in the next several months, those sort of happenstance encounters aren't really happening right now. So do a little sort of self business development and actually initiate some of those conversations so that you are someone who communicates beyond your own little bubble. There's real value in that too.
Yeah.
And when you do go to do your negotiation, come in, as Karen said, come with a plan. Don't come with an ask necessarily, but come with a plan. Maybe it's a plan A and a plan B with several sort of back pocket options of other things that might make you happy if they can't give you that. and then and demonstrate, by managing up, like what you sort of assume they might worry about with this plan. Like give the person who's going to be approving it everything they need to go to the person above them to get it approved.
Yes.
And you can always ask for a trial period. Certainly if you have anybody else around you who has a similar need, actually, particularly if they're not, like if you're a brand new mom and they're not a brand new mom, but there's somebody who has a child with, like a special need for school, or, a parent who's ill, somebody who has a caregiving need, band together with that person, work together to come up with a plan that could work universally, that has you covering, potentially for each other and for the greater corporation, and present it together. That can work too.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Got a good one for you. What's your advice for navigating a school community dynamic, which seems predominantly stay-at-home parents? We constantly feel like we're in the minority and are struggling now more than ever as a two-parent household. Totally feel that. And I mean, it's not necessarily in the workplace, but that's just more of a personal thing. I mean, yeah, I guess because I feel like school's not going to wind up happening in person, it sort of takes away a little bit of that dynamic that always feels that way. But in this situation, then there's also the feeling that there are other parents who have more capability to be there and to parent, or to, this has exposed a lot of the fault lines in people, whether it's because of economic means or the situation of your family. The dynamic, it's made everybody feel really vulnerable and casting themselves against what other people have. How do you advise people who are feeling like really stressed out about this part?
So first and foremost, I think it's really important for moms who work for money, who get paid for the work they do, to acknowledge that all moms work. Because very often what I see is that the ones who don't have an employer, and who don't have a traditional paid job, but do a ton of work in their home, fear that they're seen as, less ambitious, less capable, less something. The truth is, like, everything that we do all day long, whether it is something that is like building an app or, building Legos, like this actually does have value to our kids' mental health. And that kid is going to go off into the economy one day and have a job, right? So like, let's just level the playing field and understand that this factioning, of moms who work and don't work, like, is false. Also, there's so many people now who are, sort of cobbling together different definitions of career and work. And it's just be as inclusive as you can be. And I think you're going to find you get it back. And also understand that, this is something I saw come up. So for my book, I surveyed almost 800 moms, and I did long interviews with more than 100. And when I got the transcripts back on those, I saw that the word guilt came up for like almost everyone, like regardless of the kind of job they had, the sort of mom they envisioned themselves to be. It was a universal. And it taught me that kind of regardless of circumstance, we all feel this thing that we compare ourselves to other people and put ourselves down and think we should have made some other better choice. But if every single person is feeling that way, it's false. Like, there is no other better, less guilty, working mom or non-working mom. So non-paid for work working mom. So band together, as women, and let's make, the work that we do in the home really have more value than it's ever had before. I think we see how valuable we are, and let's share strategies that work. And, I think it's important to come together, as women.
Right. We have one more, and this is just I totally get this one. Is anyone else struggling with the fear of losing their job with the economic contraction? I want to speak to my employer, but I fear that I'm going to be told I'm entitled or worse, and then I won't have alternate employment options, which I totally get, because when you were saying speak up and know your value and all of those, that's the fear. You do those things, you lose your job, there aren't a lot of jobs out there, and then you're screwed. You need the money.
Yeah.
How do you help people over the fear, or is that a rational fear and something to really in this moment be aware of?
Yeah, I think it's a concern for working parents and non-working parents, non-parents of people losing their jobs.
Everybody's afraid of
it. Yeah, right now is really doing what it's doing. There are instances where flexibility can work in your favor. in terms of cost savings. And they're in situations where working a reduced work week and in turn having a reduced schedule really has financial impact on the company. And that could actually be a solution other than not. But I don't know how to address it. I mean, it is, I think, a fear of everyone today is what's going to happen. You know, all the news coming out now that there will be a potential wave 2 coming in the fall. I think everyone's concerned about losing their job. So your fears are not unfounded. And you've got to really look at what's going to work for you in your life, regardless of that. You know, there's no sense in setting yourself up to not do well at your job and not be at your best, because then you're not going to do great work, and that will have impact on your career in the long term anyway.
And don't forget to tell people that you even if it's hard right now, that you like the work that you do and you want to keep doing it and you want to keep growing. Because unfortunately, the bias, you know, that we're seeing, you know, measured against women is that there are a lot of managers, men and women, who are going to think like, who needs this job the least right now? Who maybe is less invested? And, you know, the motherhood penalty is real. It's based entirely in bias. And so you may need to be a little bit more vocal about like where you see your job in 2021 and 2022 and how I'm growing here. And like, I love this place and I want to be here and I want to pitch in. And there are ways, then you can negotiate the ways you can do that fit, you know, your needs. But please don't shy away from those conversations. Do raise your hand. Do take the, like, I know this is going to sound crazy, take the stretch thing. You may have to like beg out of a couple other things to be able to do the stretch assignment or have the big idea, but keep having ideas as much as you can and show that you're thinking of the greater good, you know, beyond just your own job.
All right. This has been so awesome. We're about to wrap it up. And I just want to say thank you. I really feel like there's a lot of information that came out of this, a lot of great points. I'm going to write it all up and have you know, the guidelines that are our best practices taken away from this. And we'll put this video as well as that information on our blog. I can't thank you enough. I would love if you guys would promote yourselves. You know, that's what we're all here for. Tell us about your businesses, where people can find you, and you know, shout yourselves out.
Sure. Karen, you want to go first?
Yeah. So well, for this venue, I would say the best shout out I can give is that I do career strategy and coaching, really helping people articulate what they do best to get them in the right role, in the right organization, and on the correct career trajectory that's going to work not only for your career, but also for your life, you know, and really finding what that sense of purpose is and how you can use that to navigate through the, you know, the multiple roles and multiple steps that you have. So you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on Second Shift. I guess my profile's in there as well. So
we're putting out our list of our member career coaches that should come sometime next week. So we're just making it look collated and pretty. So that'll be coming up. But Karen, yes, you can find Karen through that as well. So we can facilitate that. You can always email members@thesecondshift.com and we can make that connection. And Lauren?
So I'm mostly on Instagram, and you can message me there, or you can email me, Lauren@thefifttrimester, all spelled out.com, thefifttrimester.com. And I would love to hear from anybody who needs, you know, like as Karen said, some personal coaching, but mostly what I do is corporate work. And if you work for some place that you think might want me to do a webinar, I have a couple that I have used some. I have sort of by standard ones that I've done for years about best practices around the return to work, and also best practices for moms themselves, sort of get what they need in that moment and maintain equality in the workforce. And then I've adapted a couple of new ones that I've been giving recently about how to get the flexibility that you need in this moment, and how to do more. It's called, so I'm trying to think of the exact title because it's good, because like I'm a copywriter and I don't want to say it right, but it's basically more than just treading water, you know, how to redefine success now as a worker and as an employer.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, thank you so much. Gina, I see you're on here. Do you have anything you want to add?
I was just, oh God, look at that headshot. I was just going to say, thank you so much for this. You know, as Jenny and I have talked a lot through this pandemic, this is not the future of work. This is quarantine, but hopefully some of the lessons that we have learned will help professional women in their careers, whether or not they have children, and will take some stuff away that kind of breaks the mold that has made it almost impossible for women to really get on that career trajectory without giving up everything else.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. And take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, ladies. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.